introduce Airport High School graduate from the class of 2011, Mr. Spencer Mashinsky, with a special message for everyone here.
Hey guys, Spencer Mashinsky here, Air Force firefighter at McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas. Just want to give a good shout out to the airport communities for reaching out for me to do this video for Veterans Day, which I want to say thanks to those who served and who are currently serving with me. Without your support, the Michigan couldn't get done. So I'll be deploying overseas in January, so all the support will be needed. So thanks for that. I want to give a shout out to airport community schools and the airport community for all the love and support that they give. Some of the best educators and counselors there. Once a jet, always a jet, am I right?
So here's one of the fire trucks that we got. It's called Engine 8. It's your typical firefighter truck. And this is the one I'm driving today. So yeah, in conclusion, if you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up. But thanks for all your support. It means a lot. Have a good one.
It's my honor to introduce Airport High School Assistant Principal, Mr. Matt Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Luke Savage. Thank you for everybody coming. This it's pretty awesome. I really appreciate it. First and foremost, I'd like to begin with thanking all of those among us who have been in or are currently part of the great brotherhood and sisterhood that we call the United States military. Thank you.
Can I do this?
As we pay tribute to the men and women who have bravely worn the uniform of the United States, I am truly grateful for all of their time and service that they have sacrificed. Throughout our nation's history, we have called upon our servicemen and servicewomen to defend our country wherever and whenever that protection was needed. Time and time again, we have relied on the vigilance and courage of these patriots to keep all of us safe. Personally, I am grateful for all the time that I have spent, for the time that I spent in the United States Marine Corps. It was the military and my fellow service brothers and sisters that have molded me into the person I am today. I'd like to finish up now by leaving you a quote with Congressman Dan Lipinski. On Veterans Day, let us remember the service of our veterans and let us renew our national promise to fulfill our sacred obligations to our veterans and their families who have sacrificed so much so that we can live free. Students, this one's to you. I'd like to challenge all of you. I know when I was a kid, it was very important for me to show just some gratitude, just a simple thank you to my family members that were in the service. So my challenge to you is, I'm sure you have someone either close to your family or in your family that's a veteran. On Veterans Day, just thank them. That's it. God bless our veterans and current service members. Thank you.
I too would like to thank all of the veterans here and the students with the respect and honor that you've shown and continue to show. We take great pride in a lot of things here at Airport, and our pride in our country is at the top of that list. At this time, we're changing it up. If you were here, many of you were here last year. We try to keep it fresh with our assemblies and keep things honestly basically the same, but to add a few twists, and we always like the opportunity to involve some kids and students that work hard here at Airport in this assembly. At this time, we have some high school students that will share a little bit synopsis on the conflicts that many of you served in. And at that time, after each conflict, a quick paragraph describing those conflicts, we will introduce the service people that served in that particular conflict. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to ask, we were hoping to have someone from World War II, because we have a community member that served in World War II, and unfortunately not a lot of them are left with us, but he wasn't able to be here, but we're going to start. I'd like to introduce Mr. Willem Bell to speak quickly on World War II.
Hello. The Second World War was the largest conflict in human history, fought by the collective Allies against the Axis powers involving tens of millions of soldiers in every part of the world, including over 16 million Americans. The war officially began on September 1st, 1939, when Nazi Germany began their invasion of Poland. The U.S. stayed out of the conflict until the unprovoked attack on the U.S. naval base in Pearl Harbor by the Japanese, which killed 2,403 Americans on December 7th, 1941. The U.S. participated in the North African campaign, which lasted from 1940 to 1943. The U.S. participated in the invasion of Normandy, popularly known as the D-Day landings, on June 6, 1944. The U.S. also led the island hopping campaign in the Pacific with their B-29s. The Germans surrendered unconditionally on May 7, 1945, and the Japanese followed not long after, on September 2nd, 1945, after the U.S. Army Air Corps dropped their nuclear fission bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Veterans Day was not created to celebrate days and statistics. It was created to celebrate and remember those who served and their efforts and sacrifices. For those of you who don't know, my name is Willem, and I get my name from a man named Willem Clyde, who lived in the Netherlands until immigrating in 1952. After being caught in conspiracy against the Nazi occupation government, Mr. Clyde was sent to 2 concentration camps. First, the Herzogenbusch concentration camp, and then to the Amersfoort concentration camp, the only camp in the Netherlands to be directly controlled by the German SS. While he was in these camps, he worked in the kitchens and stole sugar cubes to feed his fellow prisoners at night and save them from starvation. His wife and small children would often go outside to watch the American bombers from less than 5 kilometers away during the day and hide in a dugout in their backyard during the night bombing raids conducted by the British. They also had German soldiers quartered in the Ply residence during the war, even having an artillery battery installed in their driveway. After Allied soldiers liberated Mr. Ply from the Amersfoort camp in 1945, he returned home but was so thin and weak that his wife could no longer recognize him. Had it not been for the Allied soldiers, Mr. Ply and up to 700,000 others would have been killed while in those camps. When we consider Veterans Day, we should not think of the wars, but honor the individuals who put their country first and their efforts to save others across the world and serve their country. This man was my great-grandfather, and if it were not for the valiant efforts of the Allied soldiers, I would not be here today. So on behalf of my family and millions of others whose lives were saved by these soldiers, I thank you for the sacrifices that have made you part of what is truly the greatest generation. Thank you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Will. And let's have a round of applause. Although he's not here, he's with us in spirit. Mr. Ted Nadeau, World War II vet who lives in our community. Now for a short piece on the Korean War, Caleb Krimmel.
He just said, my name is Caleb Krimmel, and I'll be speaking about the Korean War. The Korean War was fought between the divided Korean Peninsula. The northern state was communist and had the support of China and the Soviet Union. The southern state was a democracy and had the support of the United States and the United Nations. The split was a product of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Each government thought it was the sole leader of Korea, and the war started on June 25th, 1950, when the North invaded the South after several conflicts at the 38th parallel. The UN forces were rapidly approaching the Yalu River at the Chinese border, but they had to retreat because of the Chinese soldiers crossing the river. The air war was never in the North's favor, and on July 27, 1953, the North and South signed an armistice that made a demilitarized zone at the 38th parallel, dividing the two warring states. All the POWs got to go home after the war ended, and although there was an armistice, some experts believe that there's still a frozen war going on at the border.
Now, help me thank our honored guest who served in the Korean War, starting with Sergeant First Class Paul Olnick. Airman First Class Frank Stazza Jr. And Private Second Class Albert Francis. And now to discuss the Vietnam War, Bailey Andren.
The Vietnam War is one of the most debated topics in American history. However, the one thing that cannot be questioned is the bravery of the troops who answered the call. These individuals were utterly unflinching in the face of danger. They fought bravely and chivalrously in the defense of their country, despite very harsh rhetoric directed their way from anti-war protesters. They also dealt with one of the most difficult fighting terrains in the history of war. Most of the battles took place in hot, humid, insect-infested jungles that were home to countless numbers of underground tunnels the Vietnamese had built. They were undersupplied, undermanned, and more often than not, utterly outnumbered. These veterans faced unimaginable odds and managed to make it happen. I wanted to say to the veterans here today that no matter which war you fought in, your country thanks you. Without people like you, who knows what type of tyranny we would be living under. And to the people who didn't make it out, who died in service to our country, I wanted to let them know that they will never be forgotten. Their heroism and bravery will forever stand the test of time.
And our guest who served in Vietnam, starting with Specialist E5 Ronnie Gillis. Army E5 Tom Pettit. Sergeant E5 Specialist Robert Fritz. Chief Warrant Officer John Griffith. First Class Machinist Mate Raymond Diaguano. CMI E6 Mike Goodett. Army E4 Richard Thompson. Marine Corporal Donald Spaulding. Air Force Senior Airman Clarence Bomia. Air Force Sergeant John Brazan. Army Sergeant Arnie Lewandowski. Army E4 David Otter. Air Force Sergeant Larry Sergeant James Cox. Army Sergeant Donald Texas Sr. And serving in Vietnam and the Cuban crisis, CPLE-4 Bill Kelsey. And also in the Cuban Missile Crisis, Army Specialist 5th Class, 1st Armored Division, Vincent Rossi. And now I'd like to introduce Amelia Korn to speak on the Persian Gulf War.
In early August 1990, Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein ordered the invasion and occupation of a neighboring country, Kuwait. President George H.W. Bush immediately expressed his disapproval of the invasion, as did the governments of Britain and the Soviet Union. Middle Eastern countries Saudi Arabia and Egypt called on the United States and other Western nations to help stop the invasion. When Saddam Hussein ignored the United Nations demands to withdraw from Kuwait, the Persian Gulf War began. The United States led the fighting with a formidable airstrike known as Operation Desert Storm. The attacks by the Allied coalition persisted for 42 days. President Bush declared a ceasefire on February 28th. By that time, most Iraqi forces in Kuwait had either surrendered or fled. While estimates of Iraqi soldiers lost in the war range from 1,500 to 100,000, the U.S. ended the war with only 382 casualties. The veterans here before us today fought gallantly for our country, and they succeeded. Thank you for your service.
You remember where Mr. Griffith stood up? The guy
Serving in that Persian Gulf War.
That's
I'd
Daryl
like to introduce
Dudak.
Marine Corporal Michael Holton.
Daryl Dudak. He has two kids. One in high school, one's a middle schooler right now.
Army E4 Daryl Dudek.
Yeah. Woo! I hope this thing's recording sound.
And Airport's Marine Sergeant Matthew Furley. And now, for a piece on the War on Terror, I'd like to introduce Aubrey Schultz.
On September 11, 2001, at 8:46 a.m., the first plane hit the Northern World Trade Tower. The initial impact alone killing all of those on hundreds of others. At 9:03 a.m., the second plane hit the South Tower, and it was apparent our nation was under attack. That evening, President George W. Bush addressed the nation and declared that America, its friends, and its allies would stand and fight terrorism. The events that took place this night united our nation in a way that had never been united before. Patriotism was at its highest, and there was a massive spike in enlistment. On October 7th, 2001, the United States invaded Afghanistan, which had been harboring al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. Bin Laden would go on to be killed by Navy SEALs May 2nd, 2011. The war in Afghanistan has spanned the length of 17 years, making it the longest war in U.S. history, and it still goes on to this day. But today, what is really important is to thank those who served us for protecting us, our freedom, our liberty, and our sense of security. This great nation couldn't have survived without you, and you can't be thanked enough.
Serving against the War on Terror, Staff Sergeant E6 from the Army National Guard, Stephen Carr. Army Sergeant First Class Michael Weeding. Army Aviator Major Sean Hoffman. National Guard, Master Sergeant Dan Herrick. Army Specialist Steve Steele. Active National Guard Sergeant Christian Nowlin. Represented by Airport's Holly Baker, his mother. Let's give it up for Army Sergeant Brad Baker.
Should have had Nikki Yost get represented because she's in the airport.
Also represented by his mother, our Sandy Johnson, Airport Sandy Johnson, and he is viewing today's assembly on FaceTime. Army Sergeant Sean Cupp. It's also important to note, serving during Operation Enduring Freedom, Navy E3, Paul Beers. And again, an important part of keeping our country safe are the people that serve during peacetime. Speaking on that, I'd like to introduce Noah Doderline.
Go Noah! I need help with my
When the United States is engaged in armed conflict, men and women are still dutifully serving the nation and around the world. At home, soldiers provide aid and support to areas hit by natural disasters like hurricanes and earthquakes. They provide national security to all of our citizens. They're also called on to assist local law enforcement when civil unrest becomes too much to handle for them. Around the world, soldiers are continuously stationed in our allies' countries and are assisting in the overall execution of U.S. international policy. They ensure peace, democracy, justice, and friendly relationships at home and abroad, even when they are not in combat. Thank you for all of your service.
At this time, I'd like to recognize Army Specialist Gary Pora. Army Specialist E4, Joseph Basic. Army Staff Sergeant Michael Stiles. Air Force Airman First Class Andrew Carlos. And one of our high school substitute teachers, U.S. Air Force Sergeant John Gould.
He's actually my sub for today.
At this time, well, listen, I made a mistake last year. And I'm good, I'll call myself on a mistake. Is there anyone sitting out there that we did not recognize that may have arrived late? Good, thank you. I fixed my mistake. Now I'd like to have Mr. Fertney come back to the podium as he helps us recognize our servicemen lost.
Thank you, Mr. Crimmel. This is truly my honor to recognize the servicemen and women that we have lost. By doing so, we have taps being performed by sophomores Jocelyn Brewer and Raina Seco.
As Ryan Super and Jacob Barber lead our veterans out, I would ask that the student body and staff please stand. We have about 2,000 people in here if you think about it. And let's put it together, please, like we've not done before, and join our choir in singing God Bless America. And the words are on the screen.